Hey guys, so let's do a trade recap today. So I made 9% on this trade because I scaled in as well, and I'm going to take through the whole process of this trade. So as always, I of course shared the idea in the daily analysis videos on here, and I also shared the trade on Discord. So yeah, stay up to date if you don't want to miss out on the next trade idea. But let's go through this trade here. What I can see is USD is bullish and currently in its retracement phase. So something I previously talked about is we had that minor break. We saw price has started to shift to the upside. However, I saw this supply over here and I suspected that it would just get liquidated before we get that move down into this overall demand, which has a lot of remaining liquidity above it. So far that has been playing out as expected, and at the moment I was just looking to get in on the trend. So you could see that we had a few supply zones along the way, but price just kept dropping without us. And when you see something like this, it does seem like you've missed most of the move, but like I said, I still managed to take 9% from just this area here, targeting this demand zone. So what you could see here is that we had this supply zone over here. Now this oval that I've marked out is compression. So as you can see up here, whenever we have this tight zigzag movement, so this is different from when you have like a trend line like this, because these are quite spaced out. For compression, you need it to be like tight in the same sort of area, and what you see is you usually have this impulsive breakout after compression. So I saw that we had compression forming here, and I was anticipating that big impulsive move towards demand. So now we know kind of the higher time frame story. Let's look at the 15-minute. So this was actually the first touch into the 4-hour supply, because you may have noticed that we actually had multiple touches in this 4-hour supply, but for me the trade idea was still valid because on the 15-minute it makes more sense. Of course, check out the full entry model if you're not familiar with it. What we had was the 15-minute minor break over here with supply being formed. That supply got liquidated over here, which was that second touch on the 4 hours. So for me it was fine because it's just following the entry model. After that, you take an entry from the minor break. So I will just zoom in for you. Okay, it's getting messy. You can see here that price came up. This was the highest wick, right? But this wick went below the previous wick, so this was the low. So therefore that's why I entered on the next candle, because that was the minor break, even though it is sometimes a bit weird to have the same candle be the high and the low. So yeah, I entered right here on this candle, and well, I didn't take this trade. This is a 15-minute trade, and if you did set and forget, this is how it would play out. A nice clean TP. Let's see. In about 2 hours, you get a nice TP. And what you can see, there was no break-even opportunity because price just kept tanking lower. If price came down after our entry and then came back, retested that supply and came down, then I would have break-even. But yeah, I didn't in this case, because we can see we have supply here right where the entry is, so that it doesn't make sense to do break-even, just get tapped out and then miss out on the move. But in this case, price just kept dropping, which is great, I guess. But yeah, so this was the 15-minute entry, which you could have easily taken according to the strategy entry model. But personally, I took this trade on the 5-minute just to be slightly more aggressive. So I'll walk you through my personal entry that I took. So on the 5-minute, the minor break was over here. Then we had 2 supply zones over here. Price had already started to move away quite significantly, but it did eventually come back, so I was still looking at entries. You see the first supply zone got liquidated. There was still the chance that price could come for the second one, but since all the entry criteria has already been met, then I'm happy to already look for an entry. So I would take an entry at the next minor break over here. And what time is this? This is around 8 a.m. You can see we get tagged in. Now for this trade, once again, it was just moving really impulsively. So there was not really any opportunity to break even or trail the stop loss. You could just see keeps going down. At this point, you had a nice pullback. So you had this high, took out this high. So that becomes a strong high. And I trailed my stop loss over here. So that's why I was able to hold this trade, because I'd already secured a good amount of profit. I already secured about, 2.5% at this point. So that's pretty decent. And then I kept holding, and once again, it just kept dropping pretty impulsively. So I just kept holding. My overall target is that 4-hour demand. So I'm just letting it do its thing. However, what you'll see at this point, and I'm still in this trade, but what you'll see is we had this supply zone over here. Price came in. We have a very small liquidation. I don't know if you could see that. I'll just zoom in, just wicks above it. So basically we have a valid second entry because we have liquidation, we have a minor break right here. So I took that scale-in trade. Since this one is already in profit, and we still have a long way to go for that demand that we're targeting. So I took in a scale-in trade. However, as you can see, now if I play it forward, you'll see that price came down and actually pulled back up. On some of my accounts, I did get tapped out. On some of them, I was still in. So you can see it came pretty close to that stop loss. But on my Delta Funding Challenge, the spreads are actually really good. So I stayed in this trade. Unfunded next, I got tapped out, but that's fine. You can see that after that, price eventually comes back down again, and this is when I closed both of the trade positions because it was coming to 8 p.m. So yeah, pretty much the day is over, and since we are massively up for the day, I don't see the point in risking to lose so much profit, and you can always get back in after retracement on the next move. And what I'll show you is it was a pretty good call to get out, because if I just cancel that, you could see that price reverse all the way back up. So I would have actually hit that trailing stop loss right there. So it's a good decision. And there you go, you got a very clean 15-minute entry, and this is the one I recommend you start with, because you could see you could just set and forget and still get great results with this entry model. But yeah, I wanted to walk you through how I personally traded and managed this trade as well. So hope it was all clear, hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one.